My next guest is someone that I've been trying to get someone to talk about this for a week now, because last week your attorney general was swatted. You know what swatting is, right? A false police report is made, and the special weapons and tactics unit of the local police force has to show up, and they've got all the riot gear, and they've got the flashlights, and they got the big guns, and they're screaming, and there's doors getting kicked, and it's a scary situation here. And it doesn't stop there. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a very well-known member of Congress, claims to have been swatted 8 times. We have some popular streamers. Tim Pool, he gets swatted about once every few months. Maine's Secretary of State, actually a Democrat on the other side, was targeted in a swatting call because she called for removing Trump from Maine's ballot, and so that ticked some people off. So now we've got ourselves a trend going here, and this is not a good trend. So Dr. Alex Del Carmen, he's a criminologist and heads up the School of Criminology at Tarleton State. Explain what swatting is and where did this come from?
Thanks for having me again. Well, swatting is actually something that's been around for a long time, right? We may not have called it that. We used to call it prank calling, and people getting on the phone and calling somebody else or calling 911 to say that there was an emergency when in fact there wasn't. And so what's happened now is, sadly, because of technology, some individuals are buying these burn phones, over the counter. And what they do is they call 911 and they give an address, sometimes of somebody that's notable, sometimes just of a regular person or a school or an entity. And they say, look, there is some sort of an emergency. You need to respond to that. And then sadly, law enforcement then deploys, the officers, the resources that could have gone somewhere else, and to find out that, in fact, it was a false alarm.
So why didn't this happen more often in years past and it's ramped up recently? Or is that just my perception? Has it even ramped up?
I think it's ramped up somewhat in the past, few months, but I think part of it is our political divide, kind of where we are right now as a country, and that there are some individuals that think that it's funny, to get back at a political, individual or really anybody that they don't like or they don't seem to like to do this. And so that's growing in terms of frequency. Sadly, what is happening, though, and the effect of this is that law enforcement resources that could have gone anywhere else are now going to a false call, and the lives of the officers and those individuals that may be at home at the time the officers respond are in peril.
Well, it seems a lot more dangerous than people are giving it credit for. Wasn't there a case just recently where a guy was acquitted for shooting a police officer in a no-knock raid because how could he know he wasn't being invaded? And so the lives are at stake in this quote-unquote prank.
Absolutely. Look, police officers are trained to react to these circumstances, and oftentimes we see their adrenaline is rushing. You're calling for backup. It may be in the middle of the night. Any shadow or anyone that appears on the surface to be perhaps the burglar that supposedly they're responding to, they're going to be on the lookout. And sometimes mistakes are made, and those mistakes end up in somebody's death or somebody getting hurt on both sides. And so, what these folks need to realize, those that are making these calls, is that if in fact this results in somebody getting hurt, they are going to be held accountable and responsible for that person's death or that person's injury. And even if no one gets hurt, right, the mere fact that you're calling 911 falsely can get you into a lot of trouble.
So are the penalties too light for this? Because everyone agrees this is a crime, but it's still happening. And I've seen some comment sections of some articles say we need to crack down on these people. Is that really all it would take?
Well, I think that there are two things that need to happen, right? One is that our technology on the law enforcement side needs to improve so that we're able to track down, these burn phones as to where they are located, so we can actually put an end to some of these, right? And then secondly, the penalties need to increase. We need to no longer make it a misdemeanor to do this, but rather a felony, and perhaps add some serious time in prison so that people understand the ramifications of doing this and what it's doing to our society today.
Well, is there any place that already considers it a felony?
I don't think so, but they're looking across the United States right now in various jurisdictions, and that is being contemplated. And I will tell you that as soon as that happens and we see the first bad guy that is caught and prosecuted accordingly and is televised and is shown all over the country, I bet you money that there's going to be people out there that are going to be swayed from not doing this because finally accountability is taking place.
Yeah, it really does seem that easy. I hate to be such a simplistic answer guy, but that one, if they're still counting this as a misdemeanor, let's at least try making it a felony and see if that works. Because, I mean, what's your incentive to not do this?
Well, and also let's have DAs that are actually going to take this on, right? A part of the problem has been in the past few years, and we've seen this in places like San Francisco and other places like that, that, you know, the DAs essentially end up getting fired by the folks that voted for them in the first place. They just look the other way and they say, oh, you know, these types of crimes should not be, you know, considered serious. We're going to go ahead and focus on more serious crimes. So police officers are discouraged in doing their job because of the fact that you've got these liberal folks that are sitting on the other side of the equator trying to make decisions that have absolutely no interest but their own in terms of reelection, and certainly not the interest of the public.
Oh, so there may be like a little political self-interest and slow rolling these convictions because, you know, hey, it's happening to the other side and that kind of benefits me.
Right, and then also, you know, it's all about where the winds are swaying, right, and where they're blowing. And sadly, you know, the interest of the American people, the safety of the American people at all are not things that they're being considered. And that's the sad part, is we in the community are the ones that lose, because we lose our sense of security, we lose our sense of confidence, and the law enforcement community, which is part of our community, is also risking their lives for something that they should have never been at that call, they should have never been at that place, when in fact they're endangering their lives and the lives of others.
All right, real quick, I have a comment already on our discussion on Facebook. It says, if the FBI would investigate and prosecute those responsible for swatting with the same enthusiasm they go after Trump supporters for walking on the Capitol grass, that would put a dent in it. Is this a federal issue, or is this something that's solved at the state or local level?
Well, part of the problem is we don't know if it's a federal issue or not, because we're not able to trace back some of the calls, right? It would make it a federal issue if somebody would be calling from another state or another jurisdiction. Now, I would venture to say that there are people probably calling from overseas, and we just don't have the capability of tracking them. And so we don't know what we don't know, but certainly that is something that we need to look into in terms of whether or not this fits the criteria of a federal crime.
All right. Well, thank you for your question on that, Terry, on Facebook. And thank you, Dr. Alex Del Carmen, criminologist at Tarleton State, for a little bit of insight on swatting. I hope we can do something about it soon before someone gets hurt.
Me too. Thanks for having me.